Yeah, so if you look at line 58, that is simply the same increase that everyone else sees. There's a separate line at the bottom that shows the salary adjustment for that position. So that's just budgeted at the 4%. If you look at line 59, there's a decrease, and that represents the decrease in hours for the HR assistant. We are looking to continue to train our compliance and communication specialists, so we've added money for
Conferences.
for a conference, yeah, $500. Down below with facilities, you see it's budgeted at 4%, but the additional salary adjustment you'll see at the very end. So with all the maintenance, the adjustments you see are based on the historical actuals that we've been seeing. So custodial supplies and utilities seem to have been under budgeted, so we're increasing those a little bit. And there's that. We have had a line for office substitutes that we've rarely used, so we're just zeroing at that line. But if anyone wants to substitute in the office, it's a great opportunity. And so our leadership retreat just has become a little bit more expensive with all the numerous new laws every year. We utilize an attorney to provide that direct training, which has become more costly, so we're once again more appropriately budgeting for that. And then the advertising. So advertising line, it's not that we're advertising, I don't know, our great meetings. It's advertising costs associated with our required postings in the newspaper for all of our meetings and public hearings and all that. So those are our legal obligations. It's actually really hard to find newspapers that can print things so that we meet our legal requirements.
Has there been any movement on adjusting the wording of that to get rid of the print requirement?
No, in fact, one of the new pieces of legislation discusses how we need, I forget the size, an 18 by 24 inch ad for something that we now have to do annually.
So where do we post currently?
National Telegraph.
There is no print version, I don't think.
The Union Leader?
It's the Union Leader.
Might as well do the New York Times. It's just as
Everyone in New York wants to know what we're doing.
well, I suspect more people in New Hampshire read that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's probably a lot more expensive than the Union Leader, so. For an 18 by 24.
That differently in terms of the year-end merit pool between superintendent and other members, and then we are looking at, for FY25, we had in the approved and adopted budget just a set dollar amount all lumped together, so there's actually no change in that dollar amount, so that's there. The support staff increases right in this line here look like a decrease, but it's actually an increase but on fewer hours. So that's a small savings. It's all based on salaries. And New Hampshire retirement, we saw a decrease in that because we don't have the members eligible for NHRS, some of them at this point. And that is the nuts and bolts of it, and I'll identify where those other additions are. So here you see the $2,000 salary adjustment for HR and for facilities. The other items are, well, this would be corresponding increases to taxes based on that $4,000. And then the others are up for discussion, like I said, so we could, if a decision is made to potentially move in that direction, we would have an appropriate budget for that. So we wouldn't have to have an after-the-fact discussion. So that's the budget. It's in pretty good shape. I was, like I said, pleasantly surprised by the health insurance rate. I certainly thought it was gonna be a lot higher. So, other questions?
How much conservatism do you think is in there, meaning that you assumed worst case versus
Best case?
probable?
Well, I don't think we necessarily.
Because you just, things like on the benefits, you said, we assume that this could happen.
Yep.
we might
Yeah,
have
and
had-
so we were, I would say, not, by budgeting for a 2-person plan, honestly, with the budget so small, health insurance is gonna really move it a lot. So by budgeting for a 2-person plan, I suppose we could have budgeted for a family plan, and then that would give us a little bit more wiggle
No,
room.
but you didn't budget
We
worst
didn't.
case in those.
We're really hoping to come in at 0%. That was our target. I advocate for no snow, but I don't wanna budget for no snow. Feedback, questions?
This is my first time at this version of this meeting, and so just to like understand how this is structured, teachers are not on here.
No, this is
No, this is just SAU.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then, this doesn't have anything within the individual school districts.
Great.
just all those people in that white building.
Yeah, the White House.
To be clear, they're not in the barn, they're just in the house.
Well, there's,
Well, maybe.
they're inhabitants of the barn, but it's
They're not on a
But we
budget line
don't
item.
pay for their benefits, I don't
No.
think.
They're part-time.
Some of them are
How
probably
much,
full-time.
if at all, is it temporary or contract work is involved in the SAU currently?
None.
Is any anticipated in this budget?
No. I mean, I suppose, okay, in terms of your traditional, we're not contracting, full FTEs, we're contracting for, snow removal and those types of things.
I'm
but
talking about for unfilled positions.
None,
And
currently filled.
that's good, that was some question, do we have anything currently unfilled in the SAU?
No. Just a moment.
Knock on wood.
Who doesn't wanna work in that building?
Knock on wood.
I know. Okay, alright.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Sheena.
Jamie, that was great.
Before you run too far, are you doing the strategic plan update or are we postponing?
I can discuss it. Okay.
Do you want to?
Well, it's up to you. All I was going to mention was that the actual strategic plan is unchanged from when you saw it in your individual board meeting. But what you do see is a 1-pager front and back. So I guess it's a 2-pager. Summary. We were pleased to have 933 people respond. I thought that was a really good.
How many? I'm sorry.
933.
Wow.
We also made it available in paper form in various places throughout both halls in Brookline, to which we received no responses that way. But 97% of the respondents were parents or guardians of current or former students. 60-40 split between Hollis and Brookline. And the individual highlights and themes were roughly the same in both Hollis and Brookline.
Do we have the data in a format that would allow you to see the relationship between answers to among multiple questions? So for instance, how many of the answers that say there's dissatisfaction correlate with people who think we spend too much, or those sort of things? Do we have it in a format that we can look for relationships between responses? One of the things that I'm particularly curious is whether respondents who say we spend too much also say that we don't do enough of something, versus people who say we spend too much and we do too much of something. And there's you see that there's things that they don't want, and therefore they will want to spend less. You follow me?
I do.
Did we actually have questions about spending?
Yeah.
I did it. I don't remember answering questions about spending. It was a long time ago.
Well, I guess it
doesn't
wasn't a
close
direct
that
question.
way.
Do we spend too much money?
I mean, like, I don't remember
But it
being
was,
asked whether we
No, they're
spend
the
too
open
much, like-
questions, what they complained about. They say, what are you not satisfied with? And there were some responses that had to do with fiscal
What are,
items.
what are the
Oh.
four strengths and what are the areas
Oh,
of
okay.
improvement?
So you could have pulled stuff out. I gotcha.
and then it was, select some of the your highest priorities of focus
Okay.
and areas that you don't necessarily want to focus. So depending on how you read the question and how you interpret the responses, you can, I guess, think of it a little bit differently. For example,
I'm concerned about the high cost. Yeah, I see it.
the student wellness one was an interesting one. It was a priority, but one that we were asked to not spend any more time on. And by asked, more than the majority. So it's interesting. I think also, what do you consider when you consider student wellness? What does that mean to you? And I think the meaning of that probably is a little bit different based on who's reading it and their experiences.
And that's one of the areas where if we could look at the responses relative to whether it was a student or a parent
Yeah.
who was answering it. Because I think.
So these were all parents or guardians.
There were no students.
There were no students in this.
Well, recent graduates weren't there.
Could be recent graduates, yeah. But
Do we-
97 were parents
Yes.
of current or former students.
97% of the people that responded.
Yes.
I did get feedback from one individual who had, sorry about that. I did get feedback from one individual who was like, well, my kids haven't gotten to school yet. Was wondering if there should be a category for them, knowing that like they're here for this, so it's kind of their perception of it for a future one. If we ever do this again. Okay. Just different categories of who you are, like classification questions.
Yeah, so I guess the question is, what do you do with this information?
And so that's the next step. So how do you weave those into the draft that we currently have? So you have curriculum instruction, you have wellness, safety and security. I mean, those are, and facilities, et cetera. Those are going to be the same for eternity. The question is which ones are stressed and which ones become less of a focus. So based on I would imagine that we would take a look at the areas that had the lowest level of satisfaction and the highest ranking priority. We would accordingly prioritize those areas within the strategic plan as we move forward.
There was no differentiation in the survey of what school district they're evaluating, is there?
No, not that I remember.
Yeah, just ask where you were from. Do you live in Hollis? Do you live in Brookline?
Right, I'm just thinking, some of these questions, or I shouldn't say the questions, some of the responses may be dramatically different depending on where they are.
And whether or not they've had an experience with that particular category, yeah.
Yeah.
So Gina, I know I asked this at the Brookline meeting, but do the results of this survey kind of change any of the strategic planning now that you've seen, does that bump anything up or move anything back?
Yeah, so we're now at this point we take the results of
Okay,
this
so you're still
and
figuring that out?
yeah.
Okay.
And then the next draft will come forward in the December meeting. So that's that. Any other
Are
questions?
there any further questions about the strategic plan update? Next item is the assistant superintendent search process.
Okay, so there's a rough timeline of events that you can see. here we are at the board meeting. So if you approve of this process and the committee membership, then we would move forward with putting out a communication to parents and staff for volunteers for participation on the committee and the panel. So the process will be run by both me and the Director of Student Services. More so the Director of Student Services, as I am looking to kind of be in the background and really just make that final layer of decisions. I am interested to see what a committee feels would be good for the role without my influence of being there, given there might be some concern of, is it because they think I'm currently not doing a good job in that area? Or, you know, I don't want that to be an influence. I want the committee to kind of come to a decision on what they feel the position needs for the next year and beyond. The position has already been posted. And hopefully we'll get some more applicants. Hopefully we would move forward to keep it open until November 4th. Have a pre-screening committee. We want to make sure that anybody that the committee reviews is qualified for the position, rather than just looking through a ton of letters of interest. And then the committee meeting to review the applicants, really determine round 1, round 2, especially how to move forward. Interviewing with a writing prompt. I'd like to bring forward 2 finalists and complete their reference checks and schedule in-district days. I would like to see those in-district days meet with a panel of faculty who are interested in having their voice heard if they're not actually on the full committee, with board members, with the community in a community session, with some students, and then the admin team, the full principals and SAU leadership. And then hopefully I would be bringing forward a candidate for recommendation for hire in our December board meeting. The reason why I'd like to do this early is I'd love to really move forward. We are going to be looking for a new principal at CSDA, so I would love to have this person participate in that process as well, if possible. So.
What is the timeline of the CSDA principal search?
Same time. So my thought would be, if this person is nominated and approved and accepted and signed, sealed, and delivered December 12th, starting in January, look for the principal of CSDA.
Okay, cool.
So December meeting, what involvement does the board have in that process, if any?
So black and white, the board just accepts a nomination or doesn't, right? But I would like to have board members participate on the committee. So the committee membership down below describes that there would be board members present. In the open forum, where the candidates would come forward and spend, a few hours a day, et cetera, in the district, there would be an opportunity for more of a panel session with the board at that point as well.
When would what would be the likely time commitment for a board member, and what time of days would you expect them to need to be available?
So that has not, the time of day, that hasn't yet been fully figured out, but there certainly would be some daytime requirements for that. But typically, daytime leading into right after school time. It's a commitment, I would say, overall, probably to be on the committee, a 15-hour commitment from start to finish.
Total?
Yes.
Over how many weeks? 3?
4 weeks. 3 weeks.
Okay, so 3 to 4 hours a week kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Maybe on an interview day, depending on how many candidates, it might be a full day.
Yeah.
It
But
might be
board
shorter.
members wouldn't be on the committee. You're looking
No,
for
I'm
board
looking for
members
both.
for the in-district
No,
day
she
portion.
is. No, she's
Oh,
looking
you
for.
do.
2 to 3.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm looking at the first
That's
line.
okay.
It only mentions parents and staff.
Yeah, but if you scroll down
Go
to
down
the
to the
bottom.
bottom.
I know, I'm just telling you, I'm only looking
Yeah.
there. I wasn't looking at the bottom when I was
Um,
Yeah.
question.
Is HR involved at all in this activity?
HR posted the position.
Okay, but I'm just kind
Not really.
of curious why you and Lauren have to run. I'm used to job search. The administrative duties coming out of an HR, is it based on a need or on the resource availability?
So honestly, every search process I've been a part of has been run by an administrator.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Is the job description that is being used for this position available for public viewing?
Yep, it's posted. If you would like to apply for the position, it is posted. It's a job description. It's not really, and I mean like a paragraph description rather than the must be able to lift 35 pounds,
I'm thinking of the fact that
that kind of thing.
where it's
pretty
being
it's pretty
put out
similar.
as the assistant superintendent of curriculum.
Instruction and
That's good.
assessment. So there's
Yeah.
a description of the requirements to have a background in curriculum, instruction, and being able to work with assessment and the state for state level data reporting. Click on apply online. And there's also, I think it's
For
really
the record, I'm not applying, I'm looking at the job description.
So
my-
one thing that I added, so the posting is very similar to the posting the last time the position was posted. A difference is I added a description of the fact that we are a 3-school district SAU, because that adds some spice to the position. And I think it's important.
Does that mean the heartburn that goes with the spice?
Yeah.
Gina, you mentioned that you don't have a lot
The
of
pain.
applicants, so.
Well, it was just posted a few days ago.
Okay, but we're gonna actively repost all the, is it like School Spring?
It's School
where-
Spring, it's Indeed, it's posted here, it's Ed Jobs New Hampshire.
Okay.
It's word of mouth. I'm sharing at both my superintendent's group, my assistant superintendent's group.
Good.
Have you gotten any applications yet?
We have some.
Is this considered a local search or
It's not
regional
nationwide.
search? It's not nationwide?
It's not nationwide, but
assistant.
Indeed does go nationwide, so we certainly have some interested candidates from afar.
Do you have a
Indeed's
process
hard.
for internal applicants, like if somebody that was already employed by the district, like is there a process for that?
It's the same process.
Okay, so there's no like right of first consideration or anything that goes
No.
there. I just wanna make sure,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the hiring process is yet.
Yeah, so we don't have, this isn't a union position, so
Okay. Are we looking at more than one assistant superintendent? Because I know you were saying with the budget, like if the assistant superintendent, then a director of services, so are we looking at having multiple assistant superintendents?
So it's a totally different conversation, but I think
Okay.
it's worth considering. The same reason why we considered it years ago when we did switch the position to assistant superintendent for a couple years.
Okay,
It does offer greater flexibility,
okay.
potentially work-life balance for the assistant superintendents and
So right now,
superintendents.
we're just looking for one, but.
We're just
you're
looking to
conference-
replace me.
No,
To
we have,
replace you.
we have one open position.
Right.
But then there's a question of whether we want to take the existing position.
So what I'm trying to figure out is just like long-term, that's not a conversation we're having right now. Long-term, we're just looking for one, and then at some point down the road, we may look at shifting that title back and then having 2 assistant superintendents and then what that would look like.
Mhm.
When did we last have that?
When Bob was
When,
here.
When Bob was
Bob was
here.
here.
Yeah, so
No,
1920 and 2021.
We also gave that title to Amy in the last year of her position.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty sure we
I
did.
think it was like a March thing. It happened maybe or the February meeting. I don't think it was a full year, but.
No, it was not a
Yeah.
full year.
Yeah.
Gina, it feels like if the position is maybe gonna be split in like a year or two, potentially, like.
No,
those
no,
are-
Not
Not
split.
splitting it.
Not
Okay.
split, so
Title
she's,
change.
this is searching for her replacement
Yeah.
as she moves into superintendent. The other would be a title change and likely salary change to the director of student services. Once she completes the superintendent courses and is eligible for that, we could, as a governing board, decide that we wanted to transition that position to being an assistant superintendent again
Of student services.
of
Does
student
that-
services. So it's the same person, the same
Taking
job,
on-
it's a title.
It's not
It's a
taking on
title.
any
No,
current assistant
one is like special ed.
superintendent
No,
and then
no,
one is-
it's,
yeah.
what she's talking about with allowing more flexibility is signatory, attending meetings,
Okay.
things like that, being able to have somebody with a superintendent title present.
So
Okay.
I think I'm just confused because I'm looking at the budget line and it's saying like assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction. I think that's maybe where I'm getting confused. Am I missing something?
That's what Gina
That's
said.
the
That's
title.
title.
role.
That
Gina's
is your,
role.
okay.
CIA.
See, because we all explain the assistant.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't.
Yeah,
okay,
technically it's CIA, Curriculum Instruction and Assessment.
Okay, no, thank
It's a super secret group.
you. Alright, you've got all the letters, you're
Yeah.
alphabet.
Show me your badge, ma'am.
Ultimately, the decision is yours. I'm assuming this is a committee that's an advisory committee, or just to clarify, because I haven't been a part of this
Yeah, so, ideally, I'd have 2 finalists, maybe 3, depending on the pool. And I would make that, the committee would make a recommendation and kind of rank them, and then I would make that final decision, and then bring it forward to the board.
Actually,
the board could say no.
Actually, Andy will make it, won't he? 'Cause he'll
Technically, you're right.
Yep.
Andy would make the recommendation in December. And then you vote on it.
We vote to.
We vote to recommend, like, accept their
approve the
recommendation.
nomination.
Kind of like we do when
Yes.
Andy brings teachers to
Gotcha.
like our meetings and stuff,
Gotcha.
you say yes. So the only employee that the governing board has is the
Is the
superintendent.
superintendent, yeah.
Everybody else is the superintendent's employee.
Okay.
Looking at a hierarchy of that.
So tonight, what we are being asked to consider is this specific plan of action to lead to a nomination coming to the board. And if it were to go according to plan and adequate and satisfactory applicants came forward, our December meeting, which is normally also the budget hearing,
Yes.
Yeah.
would be a meeting. Is that our next meeting?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So anything that happens between now and then would be outside the normal meeting structure. So for instance, if the board wants to meet with one or more candidates, we would be doing it as a process step of this process, as opposed to it being a governing board activity per se. Does that make sense?
Are you looking for one person from each board? Is that your wish from there? Would that
Yes.
be? Okay.
Okay. Let's see, what is in here?
Like I said, there would be an opportunity for everyone to meet the candidates and participate
At the
if
panel. Right.
in the panel format, yeah.
So there was nothing under deliberations to specifically, but do you want to have a vote on
If
this?
there, I don't need a vote, but if there's a
'Cause what I-
consensus of the board, of yes, this sounds good.
What I
or-
would like to see, just
No.
for the record, would be a vote, a motion to approve this process and follow that up with, if it is approved, then have each board chair identify a participant candidate.
Tonight?
No, not
Okay.
that.
Sure,
That would
Scott,
not be
gets it.
tonight. That would be an
One of our
action,
board members left. We'll
that would be an action item coming out of such an approval,
Okay.
that somehow the board.
Should need to add it to the agenda that we just posted today, but it's.
I hesitate to do a motion on this because we don't have to approve it. And if we make it a formal action of the board to do a motion, I think that that's an issue because it wasn't posted and we didn't do an agenda adjustment.
Here's the concern I have. If we don't approve it, to my mind, it leaves it open to someone coming back after the fact and said, I don't agree with how this was done, and I would rather see something on record. That's my personal preference. If no one wants to make the motion, then don't.
So are you asking for an agenda adjustment
No.
to add a vote?
Or how about just the fact that if you have objections,
Speak now.
just speak now and get it in the meeting notes.
Because what about the people who aren't
And if
here?
no one objects, then everyone's good with it. It's a little bit less than a formal approval, but
And if the people aren't here, I mean, you can always say, like, they're welcome to email.
Well, that's fine. If
Express
people are
it.
comfortable with an informal process, that's fine.
And you are comfortable with this timeline? Do you feel that we'll be able to find a candidate?
Yeah, so if
Within
I
this
feel like I
timeline?
won't find one, I will certainly let everybody know and then request that we change the timeline.
So is
Gina,
there
do
any-
you feel like you need a board approval for the process so that you'll be able to, say, defend the process if somebody were to question that?
So the process has been really similar for every other principal search that I've conducted, so I feel good about it. I've extended a couple of things and kind of made it a little bit larger. I feel good about the process. Happy to have feedback, and if nobody feels that they want to voice a concern, then I'm comfortable moving forward.
It works
Okay.
for me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a process that we've done in the past.
Okay.
And so there's past practice
Uh,
to
Are
sit
the
on.
board, all the board chairs here?
Yes,
Yep.
Okay.
I think so.
Are you agreeable to taking an action item to let Gina know who from your board wants to participate?
We've already decided. Allison will be our representative. We're all here.
We're
so
glad
we're
to
just-
fish
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
the
we're
summer.
just- Mostly we're all sitting in a line so we could talk.
We have a high bias for action.
Do you want to take it back, Lee?
Yeah, I'll take it back.
Do you want to take it back?
I'll take it
Probably
back
take
to
it to the parking
co-op.
lot.
I mean, our agenda was posted today, so we'll just have to make an agenda adjustment for that.
Okay. Okay, then we can move on.
Can someone remind me? You're all here, so.
Okay, it is
Have it in a minute.
9:05, and we are moving into deliberations. First item is to see what action the board will take regarding CBI superintendent evaluation and goal setting. First read, who is running that show?
Gina.
Happy to do the discussion, but if you'd rather not, just because we're talking about my evaluation.
I think we have to take a motion before we talk about it.
Ah, good point.
I move to accept the first reading of policy CBI superintendent evaluation as presented.
Second.
Okay. So, the committee had really good discussion about this process, and I think there was some discussion of what took place at the individual boards. The committee's recommendation is to remove the line that says CBI F1 will be utilized for the superintendent's initial contract period and then in subsequent years, thinking that no matter what, the SAU governing board would be determined in May what form would be utilized. And then in looking through the policy and looking through our internal procedural documents, it was identified that maybe what we thought was in policy wasn't actually in policy. So it's the SAU governing board shall perform the annual review of goals from the prior evaluation process with a target completion date of no later than October 30th of each year, because this board doesn't really meet in September, so it made sense to have that take place after this October board meeting. We did an adjustment with him, her, them, and then the spec down below referenced only deliberative sessions, which was only applicable in one of our districts, so we added deliberative session / district annual meeting. And those are the recommended changes from the committee.
So is F1, is that the long form?
Yes.
So is there what was the thought process behind not requiring the long form to be used for the initial contract period?
It's limiting it.
Okay.
It's also saying we said we
No, no.
could still use it.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to know, like, if there was a particular reason for why we were saying just definitively we're not using the long form.
We're not. We're saying
No, that answers it.
yeah, you're not tied in. You
Yeah.
still have the choice, and you just make a decision the prior year, and maybe it's year to year.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Because policy
Question
says that we
answered.
decide in May, at the May meeting, whether we're gonna do F1 or F2 right now, so if we take this out, then we're still gonna be doing it in May, because policy says that we do it in May.
Yeah, I'm good.
Cool.
I think some of this language is also in F1 and F2, so we might want to just take a look at those two policies and just make sure it's all consistent.
What a great piece of the conversation, because the policy committee also thought that in February, where we typically have a meeting to do the roll-up of the superintendent evaluation, and that potentially this year we wouldn't be doing a roll-up of the superintendent evaluation, but instead convert that February meeting into a workshop where we really dig into F1 and F2, clean up any language, but also look to see if the questions are still applicable, if it should be tweaked, if there's something that we're not including that should be included. So rather than the committee doing that in a silo, we felt that maybe it would make sense for everyone to look at that together.
Before we can sort of get there, we would have to come to agreement that we are not doing a superintendent evaluation, and that's been discussed previously, but not to the point of a decision being made. The two opposing views to the question that I have heard have been since it's Andy's last year, and the purpose of an evaluation is generally to prepare for potential improvements and determine pay raises and stuff for the following year, it's almost moot. On the other side of it, since we have a number of new board members, the question was whether there was need and or benefit to going through the process this year, even though the outcome may not be overly necessary, so that people have exposure to the process of an evaluation. I'll just put that out there, but in order to change the February meeting, it does require us to come to the conclusion that we're not having the evaluation, conducting the evaluation as originally or as normally done.
I think we might have to make that decision now because everything's released to everybody in December.
True, so do you vote on this policy and then do an adjustment and
I think
make a motion?
we can vote on this policy because the
Yep.
conversation about F1 and F2 is about those two policies,
Right.
and they're not on
No,
they're not in the motion.
I agree with that.
So we
but
can
where's
vote on
brought
this
up, I just want-
on this, but then we have to decide how we want to proceed with our February meeting.
So right now, we have a motion for first read of CBI as presented, with the major changes being removing some sort of, I call it almost like duplicate language in it, and
Limiting language.
and correction of some of the orders of words and phrases, but nothing particularly functional, other than it removes the requirement that the long form be used and switches to the option of the long form being used.
Can I make one more comment before we
Yeah.
vote? So there's a lot of sort of dates kind of and deadlines buried within the verbiage of this policy, and I wonder if it might help for clarification purposes to sort of include like a summary in chart form. Just, I don't know, Cindy, if you remember when we were like going through this policy, just making sure that the dates were consistent amongst all three of the policies. Sometimes it just gets confusing, and I just feel like a chart might be helpful.
Is that something that can be provided on for second when second read comes up?
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Would that be to replace it in the sentences?
I
or
would,
just-
no, not necessarily. I think you could just add a chart.
Well, this is just the first reading. This
Right.
isn't like,
Right, that's why I said exhaustion for the second
oh,
one.
yeah, for second reading.
Perfect.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll go for it all. All those in favor? It is unanimous.
Okay.
However many there are, right?
Yeah, like how many times?
It's a lot of us.
15 right now.
It's only Kelly and Beth missing? Wow. Okay, thank you. Now, do you want to do an agenda adjustment at this point to include a discussion of whether or not we're going to have the superintendent evaluation this year?
Let's do the next, in my opinion, let's do the next one because it's a related superintendent eval policy. But
I thought that
it's part of the discussion, I think, for CBIR, because CBIR says you have to get the form out to everybody by 1 December. So I think it might be part of this discussion.
I just don't know which comes first, chicken, which is the chicken, which is the egg. Whatever you want to do. So you want to come forward with a motion? The motion you want to make?
Do I need to?
You did make a motion for CBIR.
All right. I just move to accept the first reading of CBIR, instructions for our superintendent performance review process, school district boards as presented.
Second.
Okay.
Okay.
Discussion.
So, there was a strike through to clarify, because this is really where we realized that our procedures weren't necessarily laid out 100% very clearly in CBIR. So, a replacement to state, in addition to individual evaluations, interviews will be conducted for the purpose of evaluation prior to the district's January meeting in the following manner. 2 members of the SPEC committee will meet with each of the superintendent's direct reports, and then each individual board chair and designee will meet with each building principal. So item number 2 was not clear in the policy, although it was clear in the procedures. So we wanted to just make it very clear to everyone to understand that all those conversations were taking place.
What constitutes a designee in that context? Is that someone, would that necessarily be someone from the board, that's the same board as the administrator? Or, because in the past, it's often been a spec committee member, which isn't
Necessarily a board member.
Right.
So I believe we just pulled the language straight from the procedure document.
The online procedure document, because this didn't have the.
Who does
meetings.
who does the designating?
The board chair,
The board chairs.
Okay.
Do we
Well,
wanna-
normally when you say the board chair, that's when the board chair is designating someone as an alternate.
Instead, yeah.
This, I believe, should be someone from the spec committee who it's either a spec committee member or a designee of the spec committee, of the spec.
Yeah.
Well, that language needs to get cleaned up then, for number
Yeah.
2.
And so what is the goal? Should it be 2 members of the board? I think it was really important for there to be 2 individuals
Right.
hearing the same thing.
Right.
To make sure, but what should it be? Should it be the board chair and a member of that
Can
board?
someone refresh my memory? So the spec committee is the vice chair of the SAU, and each
Board
board
chair.
chair or a designee, if the board chair chooses to do a designee.
Well, like
Yes.
I'm the vice chair, so I'm already on it, so I would have to have somebody else from
Right.
the.
Right, so that's.
From the
so
board
then
be a
you
part of
get
it.
into a difficult situation with trying to find another member of the spec committee. 'cause
No,
if
I'm
there-
not saying it has to be the spec
I'm trying
committee.
to, right, but if we were to say, because we just said it could be a member of the spec committee, it could be tricky to like.
By the way, should the spec committee be identified somewhere in one of these policies?
Yeah.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Is
It
it?
was.
It is.
Oh, it is. Here. Sorry. What? Where is
The
it?
superintendent direct reports.
The SAU
Um,
administrators.
SAU,
SAU
principals,
office.
All the building.
Principals are, and number 2.
The direct
No.
reports are the people in the SAU office, business administrator, assistant superintendent, director of student services. They're all his employees.
And each building administrator.
Yeah.
but
building
the
principal.
department heads of those, yeah.
I personally think it makes sense to have it be the board chair and someone else from that same board, because they're the ones that are most likely interacting with those building principals the most. I think the spec committee it sounds like it's pretty constricted anyway, so I feel like for Brookline as an example, like, okay, our vice chair still Colleen, and then whoever she takes with her, but from that board, I feel like that makes the most sense.
The reason it was the other way is that they wanted it to be people who were going to be putting the review together.
And
Putting
hearing all
together-
the conversations.
The spec committee puts together a review.
I mean, if
So
you guys want to make it that, I'm not gonna
That's what it's been in the
oppose, but-
past.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm just saying also, I think an alternative could be, it might just be easier for like each, you know what I mean? Like
But
easier to
that
get-
person, that other person, if they're not part of the spec,
You want to balance.
isn't able to participate in the roll-up, and if there's a question about what does this mean, they're not there to answer it.
Then I think as long as the spec committee members are able to make that work, I think that makes sense. I just am not scheduling wise that would be my concern.
Board chair and vice chair.
It's-
So Tom, you're also on the spec.
Huh? I know, I found that out after the fact.
Yeah, so it just depends on who ends up in these 2 positions, how it all plays out for how many people
Not,
you can possibly take with you.
not necessarily, because of the fact that if the board chair is also the vice chair of the SAU governing board, that person most likely will designate someone else as
Okay,
their
as long as that
person, so
regulates
that there's
it.
not duplication.
So what I think is, because every member of each of the school boards is participating in the eval,
Right.
I think it's perfectly reasonable for the board chair and another member to go and do those principals
okay.
things, whether or not that's like, Anne is my designee, she's on spec, for this year because of my position here already on it. So she and I, it makes perfect sense to go do those principal interviews, which is what we've done in the past as well. I think Amy and I did them last
Okay,
year.
but so Colleen's going to be on this year as the chair of, or maybe she'll have a designee, but Colleen's going to be on the chair as Brookline, okay? And you and Tom are on it, and I'm on it as the chair of co-op,
And Anne's on it.
and Anne's on it. So who does Colleen take with her? A designee from her board?
Correct.
Or
One
does
of
she
her
take
fellow
somebody,
board
does she
members.
take someone who's on spec?
No,
Like,
she
that's
would
what I'm
take one-
asking
she
the
would
question.
take one
Is
of-
the designee supposed to be on
One of
spec?
the others. It could be you, it could be
Because
me.
you wouldn't have another
Colleen.
person.
That's not
On
how
the
this
spec
reads. That's
committee.
why we're saying
Yeah,
it
that's
says
what
it
we're
takes her
saying.
from the board.
Am I
We're saying
being
to,
Does
the
anybody else
language, you make that
understand
decision. But Tom, to
Right.
your point of if Colleen were to bring somebody else from the Brookline board as that second person, why couldn't that person attend the debrief spec committee to answer whatever questions you have and then excuse themselves
have
out?
to change
And just
the-
be part of that
Okay.
conversation.
Because it's not always just
The
one
committee.
conversation, it's sort of a fluid event.
I mean, I think it sounds like it's very important
I
that the
just-
spec committee be present, so I think then we can clarify that. I think, again, we just need to be mindful, though, that everyone's gonna have probably different availabilities and times, and that just might make it tricky to get those reports in a timely manner. That would be my
I know,
concern.
We've done them over Zoom
Okay.
because that actually made it super easy for us to do because we were running into that as well in Hollis last year.
Yeah.
And they were super amenable to it.
Okay, so this,
So,
Yeah.
so
I-
this number two really needs,
I
should be
don't-
the individual board chair
And
and
spec member.
and
Yeah, then don't call it a designate.
additional spec member.
Yeah.
Spec
Right.
committee designee.
No, you can't
Has
say
to be a
designee
member.
because it's gotta be a
Spec
member.
committee
according to Tom.
member.
So,
Yeah.
and
Sorry, it's
another
the word
spec
designee
committee
that
member,
people
you
don't like
can't
it.
use the word designee in this
Well,
because
because we
that's,
don't know what it means.
you don't,
and
we're
we
not
talked
defining
about it.
that, so just, let's just be very clear on individual board chair and another spec committee member.
Okay, but the
We'll
problem
meet
with,
with each building principal.
Just for being
But the-
technical.
but there's a
the
problem
C and
with that.
spec committee.
What's the problem?
because because the spec committee is very defined, so on your board, Colleen would be the only member of your board who's on the spec
Right,
committee.
so somebody
And this
from-
says, but
But
then
somebody-
somebody from the spec committee, but we can't go into your district.
What?
I can't go into your district in that way, I don't think.
Yes,
You
right?
can go
You
into
can.
interview
As a-
it.
You can.
This policy
for-
authorizes you to participate in that.
Alright.
And this is for
So then Colleen would
SAU
have-
41, because
Right,
we all
okay.
work for,
Yeah.
we govern the same superintendent, so
I
Well, I
gotcha.
remember, I
reasonable
think
to
she's,
go cross.
Well,
I think she was bringing that up because somebody made a comment, I don't know who it was, I apologize, that said it should be somebody from the home board of the people being interviewed because they know the principals better. I think that might also have been a note of
Well, that's a
confusion.
concern.
And we
for
have,
me,
I mean,
yeah.
even
Yeah.
on our small board, we have for every committee, we have one person and a backup. So it wouldn't just be on a spec committee, unless it's defined differently, which I'm not
It's-
looking
I
at.
think it
It
might be
is only
defined
one
differently,
person.
because it's
For the
only one
specs.
person, and that's why it's.
Then why would we even have if it's only one person, why are we even having a discussion about a designee then? Because there is,
So,
I mean, a spec committee
so
member.
there's the board, so
You
there's
can't
the
do that.
SAU chair, SAU vice chair, and then your 3 board chairs.
Yeah,
That's
I
5
understand
people.
that, yeah.
But we don't want one person to go in an interview alone.
Oh, I get that.
We want a
I'm
second
just talking
person.
about the definition. If there is no other person on the spec committee, then I see what you're saying.
Right, like I'm
there's
just
no
saying,
other-
right, you don't
it'd be
have
me and
another.
me is what you're
Well, it
saying.
would be
And
you
then-
and one of the members from either Hollis or the co-op
Okay,
would
so
go with you to interview your principals.
Right, but
What
Which-
end do we want, and let's
I
define
don't
it
think
that
we
way.
want that end. That's
Right.
my thing. I
don't
think we
either.
want it
But
to be.
if that is the end,
another-
does the spec committee member have to participate? Because that could be the option also, is that if the individual board chair, Colleen knows Dan and Tricia the best, right? So maybe she's doing the interview, the spec committee member is there to answer questions and witness. They don't necessarily have to be involved,
So,
right?
Correct.
Hey,
Okay.
hang on, we voted though, on our committee,
Have two.
we have 2, Kelly and I are both on the spec.
We
from
did vote
Brookline.
for two.
So we've got 2 coming out of Brookline on the spec committee.
Well, only one of them actually gets to come then.
Well,
Then it just be the board chairs.
I'm looking at Colleen, we voted, we've got 2.
I'm just sort of just being, I think we're all getting tired, and what's the practicality that we want? If we want
Even though we both
2
have been
people
going
from
on.
every board, let's just figure out a way to say that.
But we don't.
People been involved in spec.
I don't want to be interviewing by myself.
We
Because I
want
need-
one person from every board on the spec.
Right.
we want 2 people in every interview of a direct report.
Okay.
And
Then let's do
those
it.
2 people, the original intent, and you can change it if you want, the original intent was those 2 people who interview each of the superintendent's direct reports would both be spec members.
Right, but if the spec
Yes.
member is from a different district, they don't have to participate in the interviews. What I'm saying, they can
Yes.
be there to answer, they can
Well, it
sit
depends
there.
why you call participation. They have to be there.
They have to be there, but they don't have to ask questions. They don't have to guide the
But that,
conversation.
we can't put that in policy.
Right, okay, but that could be, maybe that could be our internal policy, right, as a board, I don't know, like that, but I'm just saying, if it's that important to have a spec member, and in the case of Brookline, we would have to have somebody from a different board come in, then it could just be maybe that like the chair of the Brookline board kind of asks the questions, runs the interview, and the spec committee is there to witness and provide clarification.
I think
That's it.
it might help if you had, if you saw the questions that are asked. The questions that are asked are not board specific. They're, I don't know if the document is still in the procedures or not, but there's a set of questions, and it's things like, do you feel supported? It doesn't matter who asked that question. The questions are given to the administrator ahead of time. It's more hearing the answers.
I'm just gonna chime in one quick minute. I have like a long time spec committee member, and
Lifer.
The policy that we sort of followed in Hollis was it was the board chair, the spec chair, and it was another member of the Hollis board who was not on the spec that went to the principal's interviews. And the idea was, if I walk into Brookline, I'm not sure how comfortable Dan's going to having a frank conversation with me, because he doesn't know who I am. And so the idea was to keep the principals talking with people of their board and not have a co-op member speaking to
And it
the
sounds
Brookline
like there is
principal.
one spec member present. I mean, if the board chair is there, they're a
Yes.
spec member,
I
right?
don't
So
think
what
it needs
does
to, I don't think
guess-
it needs to be a spec member. That's what my
Okay,
argument
you're
has
saying
been.
overall,
I've
okay.
been saying, like, I'm trying to argue against it, the requirement being that the second person who walks in the door also be a member of the spec committee.
I
think
agree.
Yeah,
it
because
should be a-
your roll-up comes from the district.
Yes, it
not
does.
from individuals.
Right, and the individuals are just.
So the board is going to decide what
Right.
Yes.
gets
Right.
moved and elevated.
Right.
See, when I did it, the roll-up of the administrator inputs did not happen at the board level.
We always did that.
We've done it both. In my time, we've done it both ways. It's
Okay.
sort of,
Okay,
some of
so
it
what do you
depends on the
want-
timing.
So the what it boils down to is each individual board chair, this is item 2 on CBIR, and designee will meet. So the word designee, I think, is the problematic word for me. How do we want to define that second person? Each individual board chair and
Another
another
member of that board.
member of that board?
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I would change it
I
to.
would agree.
Yes.
And if you happen to have 2 members who happen to be on the spec committee, you're
So
most
be
likely
it.
gonna use both of them.
Right.
Because, you know, if the vice chair's from Brookline, then this isn't a problem for Brookline, but it becomes a problem for the co-op or for Hollis or whoever.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so it can be like.
But right now, we're just looking at first reading, this is input for our
Committee.
second reading, correct?
I took notes.
Yeah. No, I just didn't know whether somebody wanted to amend what we're approving for first reading. I don't think we do we?
No.
I just think you guys will take it back and talk
Take it
about
back.
it and
We're gonna
figure it
talk.
out.
Okay. Any further discussion on CBIR?
No more.
I would love to have some more, but why don't we just finish? Sorry.
We're
Are
good.
you guys, like this move forward on this corner here?
Krista's desperate for more.
Are
I
you
might,
ready?
I might need more pizza. I don't know. I mean, I'm just.
Turn it on something.
Desperate for more deliberation.
Oh, yes. Welcome back.
I think it's on the schedule, and Gina mentioned it.
Yeah, we have a non-public.
We have a non-public.
So, sorry, I was asking for some clarifying questions because I wasn't present at the May meeting. I was traveling for work. And that's when it would have been decided we were talking about whether or not I need to make another motion. We were talking about whether we're doing this. So I was just asking a question, so apologies. We can continue with this.
So,
With
we're
this.
voting on CBIR for first reading as presented, but with the input
Yeah.
that
What was given.
designee will be replaced potentially with that reading.
Updated.
All those in favor? Opposed?
Violent agreement.
You dare.
Well, I don't want to abstain.
After that, no.
I'll call him
Aaron
Barrett
will walk
if you
right
do.
in and smack you.
Okay. So, what's the next one?
BEDH. I move to accept the first reading of policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings, as presented.
Second.
Oh, this one should be easy.
Hopefully this is easy. We've already made the change in all of our boards. It's just going to a mandatory 30 minutes of public input.
Oh, I'm heavily opposed to that.
Perfect.
You saw what happened tonight.
We ran over the 30 because of our breaks.
Yeah.
Was this just an amendment to take this as a, I mean, not amendment, was this just a motion to take as the first reading?
Yes.
Why is this not?
Just because in general we don't like to adopt on first, but
Yeah,
do
we
you
like
want
to
to?
give
Do you want to change the amendment?
community time.
I mean, change,
Okay.
do you want to change the motion to first and?
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
If you
I
say
don't
it's to give
support
the
that.
community time, then that's fine. I just was curious. So why if we're already providing those 30 minutes and that has become our standard.
It's become the law.
Just
Yeah, we have
It
to
is
do
the
it.
law.
We're following the law.
I'll suggest-
Then
So, but I would
if it's the
suggest
law,
that
why
the next
don't
one
we
is
do it?
waive third and
We
adopt.
just put it in policy.
Okay,
Line it to
any
policy.
further non-discussion of it? All those in favor?
Thank
It
you.
is unanimous. So, when do we make the decision about,
We have to make a decision prior to, like now, because by December 1st, if you are
Starts.
going to move forward with an evaluation of the superintendent, the information has to be distributed to the individual boards.
so does somebody want to make a motion regarding the question? If we don't make a motion and vote on it to suspend
To waive.
evaluation process for this school year, we have to go through with it.
I would like to make the motion to waive the superintendent's evaluation for this current
For
cycle.
I second.
School year 25.
Yes.
Rob made the motion.
Colleen, second.
Colleen second.
Colleen second.
I'm so sorry. I
Somebody
think that
second.
there were like a lot of seconds.
Third Schwartz.
I think there's so many issues. It's a colossal waste of time to do an evaluation
Yeah.
just for
And it's
learning
also the-
purposes.
you're-
Who really
you're
is learning if it's
activating
not
a
real?
lot of-
Not me.
Administrative participation
Yeah.
that I want to avoid.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great to use that February meeting to go through the.
It's a super opportunity. And usually we don't have that opportunity, so.
I'd just like to ask a question. Is there an exit interview process for the superintendent?
There is no
Not by
policy
policy.
about one.
Right. Okay. So, whenever somebody leaves a job, right, they have to go through HR and do an exit interview
But-
and yada, yada, yada.
What if the chairs at their chairs meeting did that?
There's nothing that prevents it from happening if this board decides that they want to have it. I don't know, does HR have a policy?
So HR provides an exit opportunity, so there's both a written and then a face-to-face offered for every departing member. They can participate or they don't have to, and we can't hold them.
optional.
It's optional. Certainly there's a form. I don't know how applicable it is to the superintendent, but I think the idea of a board chair, a meeting that's already set up and already exists, I think that makes a lot of sense to
You
move
know,
forward like that.
There's a couple of questions. Do you, knowing Andy, my guess is that he's likely going to be having a conversation with all of us at some point as things near the end. Whether he will want to do it in the SAU forum or in each individual board meeting, I don't know. Whether it's something that would be done in public or private, whether you want it to just be the chairs that hear it or you want all board members to hear it. I mean, I think it's a worthwhile conversation I'd almost like to have it with Andy.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well, as-
I would be shocked if it was in a public setting.
Well, it depends what he wants to
Yeah.
say, because Andy sometimes likes
Yeah.
to really talk about what's been accomplished, what he feels is good for the community, what he feels good for the board.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's.
I think we can give him that opportunity to do that in public, but in the context of an exit interview, I think that really needs to be in private, or with the board chairs, or
Yeah,
with, you know,
I just think of all the
just
conversations he's
given
had
that
along the way.
feedback.
I doubt he'll have much to say that we haven't already heard.
Well, he doesn't have
Newer
to,
members,
he could, it's optional, right? He could decline.
Yeah, so.
I mean, so
I don't know how you want to handle it. At the next meeting, if someone wants to have that on the agenda for the December meeting, or what's the next
Let's
meeting
run
after
it,
that?
let's run it by Andy.
Yeah, I mean, but,
Let's run it by Andy.
but the question is, if you want to have, if someone wants to bring it up, just let Andy or Gina or me know that you would like it on the agenda, and we'll put it on the agenda.
I mean, so what I'm hearing that there is not an appetite to do an eval. That's fair. One thing that I just would like to put out there, though, is that just even when someone is retiring or leaving a job, we still are tasked with oversight. So we do want. I just want to be aware that we are mindful of that. Like, we don't necessarily need to do a full eval, but you know, if people are going to come to us and ask, like, how are you providing oversight? Like, I just want to put that out there as a thought. I'm not going to hold up an eval and demand one, but that's something that's on my mind. That's a question, because I do think it's still important, even though we're sending him off and we're celebrating him and all of that, and we're welcoming Gina. I think it's still a function of this board to provide oversight.
Yeah, we have to do that on a minimum monthly basis through our meetings,
Right.
and make sure that the needs of our districts are being met. Anything else? Where are we?
Vote.
We have
We
a
have
motion
to
on the
vote.
table.
Probably should
BEDH.
We gotta vote on the.
Oh, we didn't vote on that one yet?
No.
Oh, I thought yes, we
voted
did.
on BEDH, and then Rob
did.
made a.
Okay, so
waiving
now we've got to
motion. Now we gotta
waive
vote
the
on that.
value.
Motion to waive, yeah.
Okay.
I just have a vote that I'm waiting.
Any further discussion about waiving it? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay,
Are we
get
gonna
the
do
counter
weighted
out.
calculation?
I don't think you need to.
Yeah, you do. We have to record the votes individually.
Well, but I don't think you need to get the counter out.
Well, when I say, so we have to go by district. So we'll start with Brookline District. All in favor? So 1, 2, 3. Who's missing?
They only have 4 here.
Yeah, and opposed? Okay, so it's 3, 1. What's that? What's the ratio? 25% of 3.
Can we do that offline?
Yeah.
Yeah. it was
Well, you
just-
guys record the vote.
Yeah, but Dawn's recording.
Dawn can
Okay.
record it.
And then everything else is, let's go with Hollis. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Cobb, all those in favor? 6-0, 5-0, I'm going to swap the order if we're going into non-public and have it cleared out by the process security. What do you think?
That says it all, right there.
And you prefaced that I pay attention.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
No, it was a great meeting. Barrett did a wonderful job. I think that was helpful for all of us, and I learned a lot. And I've been here a while. We took like a 10-minute break, and that kind of pushed us back a little bit, so we're a little bit behind. But great discussions on both the budget and on the policies. So I think we
Thank you.
did well. At the timer, it should have been the right time, but we just discussed long. So the agenda was set up well.
So now.
I
need a
move that the board by
motion.
roll call go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91-8:32A, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, and C, to discuss a matter which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of a person other than a member of the body or agency itself.
On the agenda was only A.
Second.
I just read this thing.
Yeah, but on the agenda, we're only going into.
Okay, then I change my motion to take off the C part. Anybody want to second it?
Second.
I
Came out at what time? So it's turned in.
Sorry, I'm reading that.
Yeah, I know, I
Okay.
was not posted, so I don't, posted for C, I don't think. We need a roll call vote.
It's like right next
Rob,
to
aye.
Allison, I.
Joanna, I.
Tracy, I.
Colleen, I.
Carol Roy, aye.
Tom, aye?
Amy, I.
Holly, aye.
Cindy, I.
Krista, I.
Kate, aye.
Jessica, I.
We are in non-public as of 9:39. The expectation is that when we'll come out, we will come out simply to adjourn.